How you doing? Try out your new solar panels. They work.
They work.
Terrific.
They might have to do one more outage though, I guess, because
Oh, really?
the socket on they put a new meter in, and apparently they now think they should change the socket on the meter,
Oh,
so.
All right, I am going to call the Plan Commission meeting of February 1st, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
President Langfeld,
Here.
Trustee Calbolter,
Here.
Commissioner DeQuette,
Here.
Commissioner Case,
here.
Commissioner Pedra,
Here.
Commissioner Zander,
Here.
and Trustee Lucius.
Here. All right, well, stand for pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're at public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Plan Commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the Plan Commission encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that's not duly noticed on the agenda. Do we have anybody for public?
We do have a request from Paulette Glenn representing Northwest Maine Senior Services located at 1837 Vernon Road.
Okay.
Paulette, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm just wanting to comment on the support of the Creekside Village Housing Development. When this was suggested last year, I was unable to attend, and I just wanted the opportunity to stress the importance. I think everyone on the board knows there's definitely a need for senior housing in our area, especially affordable senior housing. With our demographics, we're only getting older in our area, and most of our people want to stay in this area. So it's unfortunate when they have to relocate or be farther from their roots or family and friends. Some of you are aware that I serve as the president of the Black Earth Chamber of Commerce and serve on that Economic Development Committee, and we recently did a survey, as we are too working on the comprehensive plan, and people were asked in that survey what they wanted to see more of. And yes, single family homes ranked up with about 60%, but 51% of the people that answered the surveys would like to see more senior apartments and condos in our area. I think that that's probably consistent across the area that Northwest Dane serves. So I think this would be a great opportunity having them as a neighbor. We could really collaborate with many things such as transportation, increased activities, partner to keep people in our community using the stores and restaurants and things like that together. And it definitely would support our mission of having people age successfully in wherever their home is considered. But I can't stress enough the importance of just the wellness and social activity that this could possibly offer, as well as our partnership with the Park and Rec Department and our intergenerational programming. So this would be something we could also enhance. And obviously quality of life for any of our clients is important, but having some walkability, getting some exercise and just walking to the senior center. Many of our folks that leave or have to go to an assisted living, something like that, may not have the transportation to continue those relationships they've built at the senior center. And I'm saddened when, unfortunately, with some of the county transportation that we have, they do not do pickups at assisted livings. And so I think this would be an opportunity where people that live there, we could still have them at the center, still do activities together, and really involve them in our community. I know one of the concerns was some of the business opportunity and losing that space maybe for business. And as I look around, I see that there's still quite a few vacant businesses in our Piggly Wiggly area and things. So I don't know that that's a huge concern or not. I think keeping people in our community using the businesses we have is important. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
I don't have anyone else registered.
Okay. We'll move to general business, approval of the minutes from the January 4th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
So
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the January 4th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. So moved. Number 2, discussion and possible action to reconsider Creekside Village Senior Housing Development. Is someone going to do the presentation?
Yeah, so I can give a brief
Alright.
overview as to why this item is before the planning commission again at this point. And then we were thinking that it would be kind of open for discussion and get the response from the planning commission. So generally, a rezone or an application to revise or amend the zoning map requires a 12-month cool-off, or unless there is a change that makes a difference, and language is actually in the memo here, so let me pull it up. So section 84.160 of the village municipal code regulates the zoning map amendment process. Subsection H states that no application which has been denied, either wholly or in part, shall be resubmitted for a period of 12 months from the date of said order of denial, except on grounds of new evidence or proof of change of factors found valid by the zoning administrator. So we did receive a revised or amended application from the developer. Of the items that were proposed to be changed include switching the two buildings with the townhomes up front and the larger apartment building in the back, as addressed by the development team or the developer in response of the concerns heard from the village board in regards to some of the sightlines from Bergen Road. 2, the developer did remove the request for the exception to the 35 feet height restriction, so they are no longer asking for that. And then 3, there was a change in the schedule, the timeline, as requested previously. So the WIDA tax credit for 2020 is now over. Developer is looking at potentially Dane County funding and the WIDA application process in 2021. So in review of the application and and then there's some change in the language on the application in regards to what was limits on different income brackets. So you'll notice that here, they still discuss and propose a age restricted building, but no longer as part of the application are the restrictions on density for the different income brackets. So as you can see on the map, the townhomes are in front with the garages in back. And then the larger of the two buildings is set towards the rear of the lot. So as the kind of the gatekeeper on the initial application process here as the zoning administrator and in review of the proposal with the village planner, we did come to the conclusion that there's enough change here in accordance to what was some of the responses that we received from Plan Commission at the time and the village board to have a concept review with the Plan Commission. Now at this point, and procedurally, it would be up to the Plan Commission to make a decision on whether or not to move forward in that reconsideration of what we consider as now that rezoning application. So if the Plan Commission votes to not move forward with this, obviously we don't have the support of the Plan Commission, and therefore the proposal would die there, and there will be no need to bring it to the village board. Alternatively, the Plan Commission could recommend it or recommend it with conditions.
All right, I'm a little confused on this because technically the Plan Commission does not make a decision. Even if we would vote something down, it should go to the board for reconsideration. Now, if we're voting on, do we agree there's enough change for your decision? I guess I need some clarification on what we're actually talking about and voting on, because to me, if we're actually looking at a conceptual plan, we can vote it down, but the board, I mean, they can ask for it to be moved to the board as, I mean, that's kind of like the appeal process and stuff that the village has long held, that generally the committees don't actually make the decision. But I guess our ordinance to me seems pretty clear that the call is yours as the administrator. And I'm not sure in the ordinance if it says anywhere where we can override your decision. So
Yeah, I don't believe that it says anywhere in the ordinance that the plan will be able to override the decision of the zoning administrator, but I mean, without the support of the plan commission, how do you or without suggestions or recommendations or changes, how do you recommend that? I mean, the village board looks to the plan commission to review the comprehensive plan, provide recommendations.
let me give you an example. We see things like, let's say someone wants, like, let's take the one where 1909 wanted to do the patio, okay? It's very possible that this commission could say no, they would go to the board, and the board would say, yes, you can. I think the only ones we have, and I'm trying to think of, by statute, there are certain powers that only the commission has. And those are within the commission, but I think generally how the village, unless things have changed, is generally committees forward recommendations, and it may be a recommendation not to approve, but we generally send recommendations to the board, and then the board has final say unless state statute dictates where the power is totally within, or ordinance is within the commission. So I just want to make sure we know what we're all talking about tonight, so the ground rules are really clear. So if your feeling is that this meets city, village ordinance to reconsider without waiting the 12 months, and we don't have a say, then I think we're at that point right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we got to start the discussion. I personally don't think there was the changes, but that would grant that. But anyways, that's not the decision right now.
Sure.
So I guess I'm going to ask Judy, you've been on a long time, and I know there's been a lot of other people on this commission for a long time. Am I correct in summarizing how the commission usually has worked?
Right, the
Go ahead, Judy.
Because we have voted on things, and they still went to the village board, and the village board still is faster, because we felt that piece before, like, whatever we got to. I mean, really,
That's the way I.
right, my understanding is that we don't have the say, really, the village board actually has the say.
Randy?
Well, I think the way I read the ordinance, and thank you for providing it to us, Bill, is it's your shot to call, and you, in consultation with the village's planner, have decided that this is enough of a change that it could be reconsidered. So I don't, I'll support your decision. You know, it's, I support your decision.
All right, so I guess we're all on the same page. So I think what we're gonna be doing is basically reconsidering the conceptual plan, as a conceptual plan, that was presented, in your package.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Eric, you wanted to say something?
So just for clarification, we are, like tonight, we're supposed to make a decision if we're gonna say this goes to the village, or we support this plan, or are we deciding that we support the idea of it being reconsidered?
I think the decision has been to be reconsidered. Now, I don't think we have to say that we necessarily agree that it's ready. It's soup right now. There are things that we can add to it saying, this needs to be looked at more, this needs to be looked at. We can do that, you know, just like it with any conceptual plan. But I think the idea is, yes, we're at the conceptual plan stage right now when it comes to that discussion.
Okay, so.
Go ahead.
This is not just for zoning, or changing of the zoning then?
No,
Okay.
that's my, but let's wait till discussion before we get into that. So I guess,
Yeah, no, thank you for clearing that up, because I wasn't.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Procedurally, in the history.
Yeah.
So,
And everybody runs them a little different. So what I guess, if there's someone that's a representative, if they want to go over, they don't have to go over the whole plan again, because we just talked about it in December, but if they want to go over the modifications that they've made to the plan, and then we can start our discussion from there.
Jim or Alf, did you want
Yeah, I'll just make a few brief comments. Alf, for some reason, is having a lot of trouble.
I'm on now, Jim.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Basically, there seemed to be some concern with having the three-story senior building along Bourbon in the front of the site, and then the two-story townhouse property didn't seem to be a problem. So in order to meet these concerns, we've moved the two-story, the lower building, up to the front of the site and put the three-story building at the back of the site. Also, with our previous request, we didn't know how tall the building was going to be, the senior building, the three-story senior building. So we were asking for a waiver of the 35-foot height limitation. However, upon further work, we think we can make it fit within the 35-foot limitation that the village seems to want. So those are the main changes that we made in order to overcome any concerns or objections that the village board might have. Jim, do you want to say anything?
Well, I mean, the last issue that was raised in our meeting in December was how rushed the process felt. And so, we missed a good opportunity this last round with WIDA. And so we'll have to retool and certainly the plan would be to bring this forward again next December.
I might mention that each year the WIDA process becomes harder and more competitive. And we think that based on the factors we know now, that we indeed, like we thought we had a very good chance, we would have gotten tax credits and other financing previous to this date. Now we have some time. We're not recommending we take the next 11 months to ponder this because we will be going after alternative financing and other details in the ensuing months. So, but you have additional time if you so wish to make this decision concerning zoning. And I also mentioned that we had discussions with Paulette Glum about a senior van and working together with the local senior center and how we could help each other. And we do have some ideas that would make this project, Creekside Village, even better for the community, but also for the seniors in general. We think we have some ideas that will help, including the participation in various programs that Paulette's Senior Center provides.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the presenters? Judy?
Good evening, Judy here. I just want to clarify though that you're not taking off the age restriction on this, right? Because I thought I saw somewhere that they thought about it, but then they didn't. But did you? You're keeping the age restriction, right?
Well, we are, our plan would be to provide, apply for financing that would have the senior building be indeed a senior building. But we don't know how exactly all the details as to how these various programs are gonna, what's gonna be in place roughly 6-9 months a year out. There's no way to predict the future, but we specialize in senior housing, and that's our preference. That's what we'd like to do. And our market study shows that there's a strong demand for senior housing at this location and in the village of Cross Plains.
I have Eric. Go ahead.
And they will still be income restricted, or is that not going to be the case?
Well, that again depends on the various financing programs we apply for. Basically, what we've specialized in is affordable housing for seniors. Jim Rogers here was with WIDA for 21 years, and that's basically one of the main things that he did when he was at WIDA.
Any other questions? All right, could I have a motion, please?
What's your motion? Why? I thought our last discussion sort of left it as we didn't need a motion here. We've approved.
No, we approved that they're bringing a conceptual plan to us. That's what we're voting on. Bill has made a determination that there doesn't need to be the 12-month waiting period to bring it back again because of the changes. So we decided on that. So now what we're deciding on, the plan is in front of us. So now we need a motion to accept the Creekside Village Senior Housing Development conceptual proposal. That's the motion that we'd be looking for right now.
Is that, you agree with that, Bill?
Yeah,
Okay.
So this is on
My
the,
question before the meeting.
this is on the conceptual
Okay.
plan, not, this doesn't have to do anything with the rezone and.
Which we need to go through a public hearing for. Correct. I'll make a motion to recommend moving forward with the Creekside Village Senior Housing Development proposal.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Open up for discussion. and I guess I'm gonna start it out, is that this just came back, and I think we just dealt with it in December. We haven't worked on it since then. I think from the board's perspective, they wanted more time, including the zoning of this. I think this is way too early to move a conceptual plan. What I was hoping was going to happen is that they were going to come back and help us decide on the zoning of this property since it's unzoned. And that would include the sharing of the study and the information they have, so we have something to look at. And we would have, step one would be to zone that property to me. And I would think, secondly, I was hoping that they would offer to have some time to come when we do a public hearing, where if citizens have questions on their ideas, they would have an opportunity to hear the comments from the citizen, and then they would put a plan together once we've hit step one and step two. I think we're right back at step three. The only thing is there were some low-hanging fruit that came out of this committee and the board that they took and made those changes. But I think the big question on the time, as what was admitted, is not the time once this gets by. The time is in the planning of it and the talking of what is the best plan for that property and the reasons why it should be zoned the way they would like it. Because right now we're going to have a conceptual plan that we're going to agree, and that's going to kind of tie our hands to what we do with the zoning. I don't know how you move a plan forward without the zoning to support it. I mean, I think we're going, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I guess I'm a little worn out with developments that we don't dot our I's, cross our T's. It ends up, we spend a great deal of time trying to do that later down the road. So I would like for us to start with step one, meet with them, have them present to us what the zoning, why we have it, share their research that they've done, have a public hearing so the public knows what's going on. They can hear from the public to help make a solid plan for the village. So I'm not going to support this at this time. I think we do have time. We should take advantage of it. There is no reason to push a conceptual plan through tonight when we just received it on Friday. All right, that's my 2 cents on it. Any other discussion? All right, Eric?
I tend to agree that last time we felt like we didn't have any time to think about it. And here we are, we have 9 months or 8 months or whatever before this needs to be submitted, and we're going to try to make a decision tonight. I feel like there's a good likelihood that it's not going to be approved tonight if that, if everybody feels like Jay does, that we're just kind of trying to ramrod this thing through in a hurry. And I feel like this time around, there really isn't a rush to get it approved super quickly.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I'd like to add some comments here. So, a part of this initial concept meeting was to discover some of the information that would be requested by the plan commission and potentially the village board, and identifying what steps the developer would need to take to get to eventual, hopefully, approval. And so, the information that Plan Commission is requesting in the path forward here definitely could be part of the motion if you wanted to go that way.
Kevin? And then myself.
Yeah, last meeting we did, we rushed through it, but this commission voted 7-0 to forward it to the board. The board ended up voting it down. But I feel like a few things. They've answered a couple of the big questions that were out there. There's still, the biggest one is maybe still involves zoning. We still have time between now and when this goes to final approval. We still have the opportunity, we can do it next month or the month after. We can have a public hearing. We need one, a public hearing. So that's already gonna happen. I don't know why, we're gonna have to have a public hearing. So that shouldn't be a reason to not move forward. I think what we're saying today is that we really like the idea. We'll work on the details with staff and with public input, and we'll put something forward to the board that has a better chance of passing in not February or March, but at some point here in the future, so that they can plan by their real deadline. It sounds like they said December, but I saw July in there for the county.
Well, some of the financing that we have to line up, we have to work on it this spring and summer. It's not the same set of financing parameters that we had before. We don't like to waste time, but if you need time, we have some time, but we don't want to drag this on. We don't want to waste your time nor our time. So yeah, if you need more time and if you want more information or data, we're glad to cooperate.
I just take a different view from Kevin on this. I think you build the foundation and the steps. You don't throw the house up and then say, now it's time to build underneath it. And that's what I think we're doing. And even from hearing the developer side, they're not even absolutely sure it's going to be senior housing. That's what they're looking for, but they're also needing to look at funding sources. So I think, again, it just, again, it's just the way I process things is I think we should do step one, go to step two, step three. Why jump to step three and then fill in the details from step one and step two? So I'm glad to hear that they're willing to share with us, but to me, I think we vote this down, we bring the developers, and I don't have a problem with the next month making their presentation on what zoning they would like to see. And then we can do a public hearing on that the following, and we're almost ready to go by April, May for them. Like I say, I'm hesitant, and then they can go look for their funding source and actually say, yeah, we can pull this off, or no, we need to modify because we can't get the funding for this. But everybody's jumping on the senior housing, and I agree 100%, but we've struggled with the first one of guaranteeing senior housing, and now it's not 100% that the funding will be there for senior housing. So I think we just got to start at step one. That's what I'd like to see. So I'd like to see this voted down. We then meet with the developers and start with square one, which is let's get the parcel zone the way it needs to be and what's best for the village and the developer. Any other comments? Judy, and then Bill, and then Randy.
For my 2 cents, I love the project as long as it stays as the senior and the income levels, I love it. I do think you're right, we might be rushing it, and I'm afraid even tonight we did approve it. By the time it gets back to the board, we're gonna be back again. So that would be the only reason I'd probably say no until we do figure out what we're zoning and all the rest of the details are before we take it to the board. Because as we said.
Okay, I have Bill and Randy.
Mike's letting me has his hand up also.
Okay, then Mike.
I just wanted a clarification when you say get zoning for the property, the concept portion of this and this discussion of the concept is part of that process where if they intend to get the GDP zoning. Now, if they're talking about residential zoning, that's something different as I understand it, but.
I'm talking about, I don't know. I don't have it in my head what I think it should be zoned. I think that needs to be a discussion on the different options and what you can and cannot do, that type of thing. So I don't have a particular, I think that's step one. Is that the zoning we want? So then I have Randy and then Mike.
I'm a strong proponent of this project, and I think it's a natural fit for the village, and every way I look at it, for senior housing, for the $12 million construction project, there will never be another project that comes up for this lot that's going to do as much for the taxpayers of this village as this proposal is going to do. It's we need the housing. I think it's a good place for it. There's a park across the street. There's a lot of residential housing on Bourbon already. There's excess commercial space in the village, honestly, that's not being filled. I would refer to Mike Ressler's evaluation from the last, from our last meeting. It's, this to me looks like a no-brainer, to be honest. And I think to turn this down is frankly, would frankly be a blunder for the village. Having said that, you know, it's, my hesitancy in, if I vote no today, is that, you know, it implies somehow that I don't like the concept. I do like the concept. I would like to see it move forward. It needs to be zoned, and there's other details that have to be worked out, but, you know, I don't want to cast a vote that makes it look like, you know, I don't like this, because I do like it.
All right, Mike?
Well, I have a couple of suggestions. The most important is I would recommend that the Plan Commission vote to table. I think a vote against for kind of the reasons of it going too fast or things are out of order would be a black mark against it. And I would suggest tabling this would be the most appropriate and neutral approach. Second, I understand Jay's concern about zoning, and I think what I'm hearing, Jay, the way that I've sorted it out anyway, is if a request was made for multifamily zoning, then the village would be able to decide whether this site should be reserved for apartments or whether this site should be reserved for a business use. And at least that would get cleared up. Third, the third point I want to make has to do with some details, and it's particularly if we table, it's early for details, but I want to give those to the applicant right now. I like the change, and I supported Bill's ruling that it was enough of a change. If the townhouses face Bourbon Street, I think that's an advantage. It's much more compatible with the residential densities across the street. However, townhouses have front doors, and front doors have porches and stoops, and there should be a sidewalk leading from each front door to a public sidewalk along Bourbon so that everybody has a sidewalk to their front door. And then another comment that I want to make, and maybe I don't understand the grading, but if you envision leaving the apartments in your car, you come out the west end of the apartments, and then you drive south, and then you drive past all of those head-in parking spaces and the garages for the townhouses, and then exit the site. That's quite a bit of traffic going, you know, winding its way through the site. And I'm wondering if it's possible to put the drive that ends up going under the building on the same side of the site as the driveway entering from Bourbon, so that crossing traffic where people are backing out of their garages doesn't have to occur. And as a senior, I can say that I would much prefer to back out of my townhouse with reckless abandon rather than worrying about crossing traffic related to people coming or going to their apartments. So I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would be an improvement as it is, if it is possible. I like the commitment to the recreation room on the ground floor and other facilities. And I would like to see, as these plans evolve, something done with that kind of building apron that's south of where the little L is. That's either a lawn area or a plaza area. So Bill, it would be right in the middle of the site there, adjacent to the building. That looks like it could be, you know, picnic tables, you know, some sort of gathering amenity where the people in the townhouses and the people in the apartments could kind of get together in the middle of the site. It's, to me, it's begging for a little bit of a special treatment there. And then the final point I have is we've got the sidewalk now located. It doesn't show up on this air photo, but we've got the path that goes from Bourbon all the way to the park to the north. And, you know, it's located right next to the fire department parking. And it shows up on newer air photos. And I would like to see the internal sidewalk network for this project make a connection there for two reasons. One, it would be the fast way to get to the park without having to walk through the parking lot or out the back of the building, if that's possible. You know, make it easy to get to the park, and also make it easy to get to the playground in case you've got grandkids visiting and you want to take them over to the park across the street. So in addition to the public sidewalk along Bourbon, I think that we need a public crosswalk. And Bill, maybe there is one now, but where the park path comes across Bourbon to the playground site, I think we ought to have a marked crosswalk. And I don't know if it's exactly in front of this property or more in front of the fire station. But I think we're talking about more pedestrian traffic, particularly with the playground there. And I think it would be a good idea to have a marked crosswalk. So these are really detailed comments. And I think that Jay's question about, is this the right site for multifamily, is the fundamental first question. I completely agree with Jay's point about that. But in case we didn't have another chance to talk about the site plan early on, Alf and Jim, I wanted to give you those comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Eric?
I agree that getting the zoning right is probably a very important first step, but I also feel like if we just go to vote on if we're going to zone for multifamily housing, there are a lot of people that are opposed to more regular apartments, but there are a lot of people that really see the need for senior housing and would be supportive of that. So that's where I get kind of confused on the order of things that we're doing here. I think it's important when we're deciding the zoning for this that we keep in mind that the project we're looking at specifically is this senior housing project, which I think the majority of us agree there is a real need in this town for it versus another just general apartment house.
Well, I believe you could put conditional zoning on the property that said it would have to come in for a planned development and it would have to be for affordable housing.
All right, I think Mike made a really good point, and I'm certainly willing to table this versus a vote, but that would be up to the people who made the motion and the seconders. Otherwise, we'll have to move forward on it, at least the vote. So I think that is actually a very good suggestion that would give us time to work out step one and step two, and then bring it back. And they could also have an opportunity. I think Mike made a lot of good comments on the detail part of it, that they could start working on some of that. So I guess.
So what's the procedure for tabling? Well, I mean, there's a motion. In a second.
We have to pull those, and then we get a motion to table.
Withdraw. So Kevin withdraws and then I can say after.
I can withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw mine.
The motions have been, the motion has been withdrawn. Do I have a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table the consideration of Creekside Village Senior Housing Development, the conceptual proposal.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I guess it's not related to this, but I would ask the developers, we'd like to move forward with this, that maybe at the March meeting, if you can get us the information that you think is applicable for our discussion on the zoning of this lot, we certainly can place that on the agenda so we continue to move this forward. Is any other discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on this.
Trustee Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner DeWitt. Yes. Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Federer,
Yes.
Commissioner Zander,
Yes.
Trustee Lucius,
Yes.
President Lightfoot.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who participated on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
We will go to review of the zoning code, and I think, I don't want to go through it all tonight. I know Mike was going to try to get us some information, but I'd at least like for us to look at the first page, which is PDF 17, page 80, just so everybody has an understanding of how this works. And I have some questions on even this page. So I guess what I'd like is, Mike, if you want to give us any type of update. Otherwise, we can look at this and just kind of get our feet wet and looking at the zoning, the use of zoning.
Right. Well, I would like to give an introduction and a little bit more background information because I think it colors how we will review this table.
Okay.
So this table allows us to look at the zoning districts, which are in blue and are the columns, and find out what land uses, and this is the residential land uses page, what land uses are permitted as a matter of right, where all you have to do is make the, submit the plans for staff approval and you get a building permit. And those uses permitted by right are the Ps, or whether it's a conditional use, which are the Cs, or whether it's not allowed, which are the blank cells. So I think that's straightforward enough, but while I'm talking about that, let me jump ahead and talk about what's happened since we adopted the code. When the code was adopted, it was the applicant's responsibility to prove to the village why a conditional use that they were proposing was worthy of approval. The ball was in their court. And if they failed to do such, it would be logical for the village to deny the conditional use permit, and legally the village would have a clear right to do so. So we were liberal with the number of Cs that are on this page and on the following pages, because we could allow for the possibility of a conditional use, but we knew that if it just turned out to be a bad use in a good location, or a good use in a bad location, or a bad use in a bad location, we could turn it down. And 3 years ago, as Governor Walker was in his last year, the state passed a law that kind of flipped the legal status of a conditional use permit. This was part of Act 67. And now, to deny a conditional use permit, the village would have to make a case for denial. And, you know, I feel you've got a very good village administrator and a very good village planner that could help make the case. But, you know, frankly, I think now, under the way the law has changed, maybe we have too many Cs on this table. And let me give you an example. Let's look down near the bottom of the table where we have that column of 3 Cs in a row. So that would be a mobile home, an individual mobile home on a lot, or a subdivision plat for mobile homes. And these would be like manufactured homes, homes on a chassis, not a modular home that is assembled in parts and then brought to the site and then screwed and glued together, but a mobile home, manufactured home. That's what we're talking about here. So you could do a mobile home subdivision, or you could do a mobile home park where, you know, all of the mobile homes are on one lot. It's kind of an apartment complex, except we're talking about individual mobile home units. So a typical mobile home park. So those are all allowed as conditional uses in the duplex zoning district. And the reason they're in the duplex zoning district is a typical density for a mobile home subdivision or park is pretty comparable to the density of a duplex. Now, since Act 67, we've changed our strategy for mobile homes and for a number of other uses, large outdoor entertainment uses like an amusement park or a speedway. What we've done is we've created a unique zoning district, maybe called the mobile home zoning district. And these might be conditional uses, but first you have to get the property zoned mobile home. And the reason I'm bringing this up is if we're talking about changing this table in particular, I think it would be strategic to create 4, count them, 4 special use zoning districts, one for mobile home development, one for large scale outdoor entertainment. Now, I'm not talking about a tavern with volleyball courts. I'm talking about, you know, amusement park, fairground, racetrack, you know, things that are at a whole different scale of impact and traffic. I think a unique zoning district for extensive outdoor storage would be another one. And then we might need one for larger scale multifamily development. Right now, our high density multifamily residential is 16 units an acre. And you can get 16 units an acre with a 2-story building. You cannot get 30 or 50 units an acre with a 2-story building. You need 3 stories and you probably need underbuilding parking. So in the thinking I've done about this, not only have I thought about where we change Cs to Ps or Ps to Cs or take out Cs, but in our new version of this code, we're recommending those 4 very specialized zoning districts. And you can see in this code, we have that mineral extraction zoning district in the far right-hand column. That's kind of an equivalent strategy. And the reason that I'm recommending these additional zoning districts is because the courts see the granting of conditional uses very differently under Act 67 than a zoning map amendment. it's very easy to make the case to deny a zoning map amendment. I've joked, but I'm partly serious about this, that if the Plan Commission and the village board wanted to deny a zoning map amendment because it was an odd numbered calendar year, that would be good enough. You can be very arbitrary about a zoning map amendment because it's a legislative act. It's not a quasi-administrative act like a conditional use permit. So in other words, if you wanted to deny a rezoning for a mobile home park, you could very easily, rather than having to prove that it's a bad idea. Since Act 67, a big change in our codes has been to take some of the trickiest uses, like mobile home parks, and require a zoning map amendment in order to approve them. Another example is creating a unique institutional district. So, not meaning to get ahead, except as an example, Bill, if you could go up a couple pages, I want to find churches and schools. I'm sorry, I meant down. There we go. Let's look at those institutional uses. So we show indoor institutional, which is a church or a school or a library or a museum, as always getting a C. And they're in all of the districts because, we sometimes find churches in even industrial districts, and we sometimes find them in neighborhoods, and sometimes we find them on Main Street. And schools we find in the middle of neighborhoods or on prominent lots that are kind of on the transition between a neighborhood and a business area. And we've got schools in the village that do just that. So again, before Act 67, we had this all as Cs because we could decide, is this the right use for this location? Did this make sense? And these are often spot zones, these institutional uses, and it's okay to have a spot zone as long as it's the right use in the right place. But now under Act 67, it's a lot trickier to deny conditional uses. And so we've been recommending an institutional zoning district for things like schools and churches, because again, it's a lot easier to justify a denial if it's the wrong use in the right place or the right use in the wrong place. So anyway, that Act 67 is a sea change, and I think is the most important factor to consider when looking at this table. And I understand the commission's desire to streamline things and eliminate conditional uses, but for this one kind of issue, these spots, whether it's a big outdoor entertainment or outdoor storage facility or an institutional use, I think it makes sense to create a couple more zoning districts to give the Plan Commission and the village board the level of control we need. So I'm okay going back to that first page of this chart, Bill, but I thought it would be important because when I'm thinking about this table, keeping in mind your desire to streamline things, the fact that Act 67 got passed is just gnawing at me. And I think it's very important that I give you a warning about another reason to eliminate conditional uses or even have a stronger zoning map amendment strategy for these kind of tricky spot zone uses.
All right, that's great, thank you. I think we should be keeping track of the recommendations, but if we can go back to that PDF, page 17, that first one. Yep. If you can help me, this is where I have a hard time understanding it. If you look under townhouse 5 to 8 units, multiplex 5 to 8 units, and apartments 5 to 8, you need a conditional use permit when it's zoned multiple family residential MR8, but you don't need it for when it's in a MR16. Isn't MR8 for 8 units? So why would you need a conditional use, but if you're gonna put it into one that's zone 16, which is twice the size, you don't need to. It just seems backwards to me.
Oh, let me take you through this.
Okay.
So our multifamily 8 is for 8 units an acre density, which is like a 4-unit building, like a 4-unit apartment building, like those brick 4-unit cubes that are all over the west side of Madison.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's a little townhouse project that tends to be about 8 units an acre. And so those are small scale. And so when we wrote the code, if we look at townhouse 3 to 4, multiplex 3 to 4, apartments 3 to 4, the 3 to 4s are permitted by right in both the low density multifamily and the high density, because these are little buildings. They're bigger than a house, but not a lot bigger than a house. So the commission and the board were comfortable allowing these small unit multifamily buildings by right. But in the lower density district, they were a little bit concerned about the 5 to 8, the larger buildings, whether they were townhouses, multiplexes, or apartments. So they wanted conditional use control in the low density multifamily district. Now, conversely, when we go to the high density multifamily district, you're going to pretty much need to go with the larger buildings, and you would tend not to get buildings that were more than 8 units for townhouses, multiplexes. Those buildings don't work once you get above 6 units or so. So, or sorry, above 8 units. So all of those small and medium-sized multifamilies were seen as okay to be permitted by right. But then the much larger apartments at 8 to 16 units were the conditional use. And the village didn't want those bigger units in the low density multifamily, so there's a blank there, but was willing to consider them in the higher density multifamily district. So I know it's a little bit confusing, especially since we didn't put all the 3 to 4 units together, which we debated, which would be clear. In the end, we decided to keep the townhouses together, the multiplexes and the apartments, rather than organize those rows by size of building.
Okay, I've got Todd, and then I'd like to comment.
This is just a question, Mike. If we can leave a square blank because we don't want to allow it in that section.
Yes.
For an example, single family 35-acre lot, can we just take that C out? We just don't allow 35-acre lots with single family?
Well, that's our holding district, our rural holding district, which is 1 home per 35. So, you know, that district might be a dairy farm that annexes in, and it might have a house on it as well as dairy cattle. So we've got this kind of agricultural district, and that would be where we would want to allow a large lot like 35 acres.
Right, but for this, just I'm using it as an example. If we didn't want to allow that, we could take that out and it just wouldn't be allowed, period, correct?
Correct. Now an important rule of zoning is in any community that has water and sewer, you have to anticipate that almost any land use is possible in at least one zoning district, like a sewage treatment plant or a nuclear waste facility. So if we have a column somewhere in this table of uses, there has to be at least one C or one P. So that's a rule we have to follow. But yes, we could make that a blank if we didn't want to allow single family homes in the ag district.
Okay, can we go back to what you just explained? See, and this is where I think it's bad policy. If we zone a lot for an 8 unit, but then say, well, you really don't necessarily can put an 8 unit on, you gotta come to us to get special permission. I don't understand why we would have zoned it for an 8 unit. I think the zoning discussion should go on before we actually zone it. Now, I can see if that's a big concern, we add a multifamily residential 4. So it's an MR4. So now the board has a decision, you can make it an MR4 for a 4 unit, an MR8 for an 8 unit, and an MR16, but then it's a P. I just, I understand what you're saying, that they're bigger buildings, but why would you zone something for a bigger building, but then not necessarily allow that building to be built? I think that's where the confusion and frustration comes. If it's zoned MR8, you would think you'd be able to just come in and put a 8-unit apartment building on it.
So I have a good answer to this.
Okay.
It's a good question. So the, Bill, could you page down just a little bit so we could, I'm sorry, up, so we can see the whole name of the district. So wherever we have a residential district, we have that dash and then a number. So like MR8 or MR16 or SR4, the number is not the number of apartments in a building. The number is the density that you should expect to get. So MR8 means 8 units an acre, and MR16 means 16 units an acre. And it is like a zoning math coincidence that you could use an 8-unit building or a 16-unit building to get that density. But the number in the zoning district title is the density that you can get, not the number of units in a building.
Okay. Yeah, Kevin.
Mike, just because we have a particular zoning, are we required to have that zoning somewhere on the map in the comp plan?
No. And we aren't required to have it on the zoning map. It could be a district that we just haven't decided to use.
Yeah, okay, so again, I thought so. So my follow-up to that is then, really what we're trying to build in is some possibilities to amend zoning if the opportunity arose in the future. So what I'm getting at, if something came in at single-family SR3 and somebody proposed to change it to SR4, we could do that. We could make a zoning change, correct?
You can.
Even though we didn't have SR4 on our maps anywhere.
Right, so it has to be consistent with the comp plan, but the comp plan doesn't distinguish between these single-family districts.
Yeah, right.
It shows single-family. Yep.
Thank you.
So, for example, we would not have to map an institutional district anywhere, although we probably would. We wouldn't have to map a mineral extraction district. We wouldn't have to map an intensive outdoor storage or entertainment district anywhere on the map. What we have to be able to do is prove to a court that we don't exclude those uses de facto from the zoning code or the zoning map, that the possibility for uses is there. It just has to be in an acceptable location.
Hey, Bill?
So, Mike, this is Bill, this is a question for you. So obviously, we can't think of everything that potentially could be developed in the future. Instead of creating those specialized districts for potentially, I don't know what may come up in the future, how do we solve that?
Yeah, so let's go again to let's look at this page first. All of these dwelling units are, a very specific land use, and in fact, we're dividing residential land uses by building type. Super specific. Let's go to the next page, though, of the table. And let's look at, let's go down to the next page, Bill. I'm sorry. Okay, so commercial land uses are always changing. There are a lot of zoning codes that, still talk about automobile laundries and record stores. And, for a while there were CD stores, but now we have used CD stores. So, somebody's always coming up with something different to sell. So the majority of land uses we have in the zoning code have a description that is meant to talk about how each land use category has impacts that are similar and has site requirements that are similar. Traffic and parking impacts are similar. Is it a noisy or a smelly use? So it creates these categories of use. So if we look at indoor sales and service, which is the third row, we do not distinguish between jewelry stores and toy stores and pet stores. We have these general categories. So one advantage of this approach is no matter what kind of new use somebody comes up with, it's going to fit well in one of these land use categories. So that's how we keep the code current without having to update it every year with new sets of land uses. I think I answered your question, Bill.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Judy? Judy, go ahead.
Mike, I thought last time, did we ask for like, what other areas are doing? Are you gonna still give us that kind of too or no?
You did, and what I wanted to talk to you as kind of step one about is this Act 67 and how it's hard to deny conditional uses, and we probably should add several more columns to this table. It really is the most important message I can give you. But let me tell you some other ideas that I thought of, and this is a good page to be on. Physical activity studio, which is 6th row here. That would be a Anytime Fitness or a yoga studio or any, a karate studio. So these are spaces that are often found in strip malls or other very typical retail spaces. And the traffic all tends to show up at the same time with people leaving and people arriving for the next class. And there tends to be kind of thumping music. And there often tends to be little kids. So it could have some tricky aspects to it. But in thinking about this, all of those C's could be P's. We have a noise ordinance that limits thumping music, and we review site plans very carefully for traffic safety. And these are open often, well after dinner time, but they don't go till midnight or anything like that. So this would be an example where I think the rest of the code is strong enough that if you wanted to change those to Ps, I think we've got enough other controls in the code where we could make those permitted by right. Another example, in-vehicle sales or service. Those are drive-up, drive-through kinds of uses. And so, one concern is there's more traffic. They're often open after dark, and we have the issue of sweeping headlights. We've got outdoor speakers, and we have to light up the path for the vehicles to travel on. So a lot of communities like to have the discretion to review these and maybe say no. But we have noise limits, we have lighting limits. We can put hours of operation right in the zoning code, identify them ahead of time. We have requirements for landscaping or fences. We could add those as a requirement alongside a drive-through if it abuts a residential use. So again, those could all be Ps, if you're comfortable that the code is strong enough. And I think it's strong enough, but you may have a different opinion about those. So I've done a lot of thinking about what could be P's and C's, but I wanted to talk to you first about how hard it is to deny a conditional use. So, for example, if these drive-through uses were allowed in a multifamily district, I probably wouldn't think of it being a good idea to make it a P. But I think they're in the right districts, and so I think there's a lot we could do to streamline it. You'll be losing discretion, and there may be a use that you wish you hadn't have made it a P, that you still had a C on. But I think I can help you be prudent about how streamlined you want to get. And there's always a tipping point where for that particular use in that particular district, we better keep it a C.
All right, I don't want to go late into the evening, obviously, on this, but let's plan on this for the March meeting. Let's take a look at because the whole reason I brought this up was more towards economic development and business. So
Right.
let's look at the commercial land use page. That's page 19 or page 82 of our code. And let's start talking about that 1 through 25. And Mike, if you could send us the suggestions on which you'd like to add, what you think we should add to the top side of that matrix, then we can start looking at these and making some progress. So let's, for next meeting, let's focus on page 82. Think about it, Mike, if we can just focus on that at the next meeting. And then whatever you name 3 or 4 that you think we should add to the top of the matrix. So we can probably talk about that. Kevin.
Mike, could you please include any definitions? I would not have known what in-vehicle sales or service was until you explained it. So is there a place to find that, please?
Yeah, so we have one chapter that has all the zoning district rules, and there's a definition of that zoning district. So you can find that in the table of contents. And then the following chapter is about, yeah, go ahead, Bill. The following chapter is about all those land use categories. So there is about a 4-sentence definition of each land use category. And then we provide the common examples of that. So for example, indoor institutional, we list schools, churches, libraries, museums, and several others. So we have very good definitions. And I can tell you that I've been using this approach for 32 years now. And it's in about 55 zoning codes. And some of them go back, to 1985 or so. And none of it's ever been court challenged, and there have been very few changes to the categories. So, from the example of a lot of different zoning codes and a lot of different years, the ordinance is, this part of the ordinance is held up well, but the complete definitions are there in the land use chapter of the zoning code. And Bill, I don't know if you want to take the time to go to one of those pages, but we could do that.
Are you talking about an article 3 there, or?
Did you call up Article 3?
Yes. Article 3 talks about the.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
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 Yep, thank you for telling me where it was. I can find that. If you send that out, though, a link to it would be helpful.
Yeah.
To the articles or to, it's a part of your memo,
The zoning ordinance.
zoning ordinances.
Okay. That's gonna have the definitions that he just mentioned. That's the end of that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just for a quick reference, in the memos, every time that there's a blue underline, links to the code.
We're good? Well, I thank you, Mike, for that discussion. We kind of have our assignment, so we'll hit that at the next meeting. And Bill, can you just make sure that it's in the packet, at least that page? So it's a reminder to everybody. All right, everybody comfortable with moving on to the next agenda item? All right, so the next agenda is discussion and possible action setting the date and time for future plan commission meetings. Really, it was asked that we move the meeting from 7 to 6 o'clock. I think we need to keep it on the first Monday of the month, but there was a request, move it to 6 o'clock. So, Judy?
It used to be at 6, and then we had someone that changed their work schedule, so we changed it to 7, but that has changed again, so that's why we're requesting to go back to 6. Just for an update.
Does anybody have a problem with the 6 o'clock start?
This is Mike. I've got a 5 o'clock meeting in Delavan on first Mondays. And they're in the middle of considering whether to move it to a Thursday. So could we wait a month and I'll let you know?
Everybody all right with one more month at 7?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there.
that, we can do that. So we'll table this until next month. Do I have a motion to table this?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So we tabled it to next month. All right, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Hey, Bill. I know you're gonna hate this idea.